Ahead of sending a delegation to inspect the Fukushima wastewater, South Korea will hold a meeting with Japan in Seoul to discuss the scope of the investigation activities. The South Korean government for the fourth straight month is assessing the domestic economy as slowing down on slumping exports. And South Korea's southern county of Hadong is hosting the 2023 World Tea Expo, a chance to explore the finest quality tea and its history. Good afternoon. As South Korea prepares to send its team of experts to Japan to inspect the Fukushima wastewater, the two sides will hold a meeting in Seoul to discuss the scope of the investigation activities that have recently caused some friction between the two countries. Our Moon Arirang has the details.
High-level officials from South Korea and Japan are due to hold talks in Seoul on Friday on the planned release of wastewater from Japan's destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant. The meeting aims to outline a detailed schedule of inspections to be undertaken by South Korean experts on the 23rd and 24th of May on site, as well as the scope of the assessments. Seoul's main focus will be to confirm Japan's capacity to treat contaminated water, such as its advanced liquid processing system which removes radionuclides from polluted water. This follows the bilateral summit last Sunday between President Yoon and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, during which they reached an agreement to allow an independent inspection of the wastewater stored at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant by Seoul. There have, however, been disagreements regarding the scope of the investigations. Japan claimed that South Korean experts will not be allowed to directly check water samples, but Seoul has pushed for the need to verify the water purification facilities. Prior to the talks, the Vice Minister of the Foreign Ministry is scheduled to publicly disclose the South Korean government's position and the preparation status of the inspection team to ensure clarity. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant disaster back in 2011 was the biggest nuclear accident since Chernobyl, and the process of decommissioning the plant has been delayed by the accumulation of water used to cool the reactor cores. As a result, more than 1 million tons of supposedly treated water is to be released into the ocean, raising concerns about the possible ramifications it could have on marine life and the seafood industry, as the International Atomic Energy Agency has already confirmed that ALPS does not filter out tritium. Today's talks are expected to convey the level of inspections that South Korea deems appropriate, with the presidential office saying that inspections should be different from the IAEA's process, as Korean experts are already part of that task force. Moon Arirang, Arirang News.
President Yoon invited former Japanese Prime Minister Taro Aso for dinner at his residence on Thursday and asked for continued support as the two nations have been improving ties recently. Aso responded by showing his appreciation for President Yoon's efforts to improve on years of frosty ties, saying there has been a significant step forward since Yoon took office. Aso, who serves as vice president for Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, is on a trip to South Korea to attend a forum on Friday. He also chairs a civilian committee on South Korea-Japan cooperation and was in South Korea last November when he also met President Yoon. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with his Chinese top diplomat Wang Yi in Vienna for candid and constructive talks. This is the first director-level diplomatic engagement between the two countries since the spy balloon incident prompted U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to postpone his visit to Beijing. According to the White House, the meeting in Vienna this week was part of the ongoing efforts to maintain open lines of communication and responsibly manage competition, adding that there were candid discussions on key issues, including Taiwan and the war in Ukraine. China's state-run Xinhua news agency also reported that the two sides held substantive talks on removing obstacles in bilateral relations and agreed to continue pursuing this channel of strategic communication. For the fourth consecutive month, the South Korean government is assessing that the domestic economy is in slowdown on slumping exports and investment. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea continues to grapple with a sluggish economy. The Finance Ministry's Economic Green Book released on Friday shows that the economy is losing steam largely due to sluggish exports. This is the fourth consecutive month that the report has said there is a slowdown in the economy. Exports in April plunged around 14% compared to the previous year to around $50 billion, declining for the seventh straight month. Out of the 15 major export items, only 3, ships, automobiles, and general machinery, showed an on-year increase. Semiconductors, the nation's key export item, plunged 41% compared to the previous year. The country has been battling a trade deficit for 14 consecutive months as exports continue their downward trend. The employment rate among those aged 15 and above stood at more than 62%, up 0.6 percentage points on year last month. This was largely driven by the rise in employment in the service industry, such as the food and accommodation sector, with the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions. Employment in the manufacturing industry, however, was hit hard by the sluggish chip sector, dropping nearly 10% last month. Facility investment in March also dropped 2.2% compared to the previous month, as investment in transportation equipment fell nearly 10%. The nation's current account surplus, however, came to $270 million in March, and April's current account is also expected to show a surplus. Domestic demand is also showing signs of moderate recovery. Retail sales, an indicator of private spending, rose 0.5% on year with the increase in tourists from China. The number of Chinese tourists that visited South Korea last month soared by more than 1,000% compared to a year ago. There's also some positive news when it comes to inflation, as the nation's consumer price growth slowed to 3.7% in April, falling below 4% for the first time in 14 months. The government plans to focus on implementing economic policies that will improve exports, investment, and domestic demand. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
As the U.S. faces looming default on debt, the IMF warns the global economy faces, quote, very serious repercussions if the U.S. Congress fails to reach agreement on the debt ceiling. President Joe Biden might cancel his trip to the G7 meeting in Japan if the issue drags on. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
According to the International Monetary Fund on Thursday, a potential U.S. default caused by the failure to raise its debt ceiling would have very serious repercussions for the country's economy as well as the global economy. Speaking at a news briefing, IMF spokesperson Julie Kozak warned that authorities need to stay vigilant on new vulnerabilities in the U.S. banking sector due to likely higher borrowing costs. She added that higher interest would also bring about broader instability in the global economy. A similar warning was issued by U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who said a default on U.S. payments could come as early as June 1st if Congress fails to raise the borrowing cap. And a U.S. default would mean much more than just further instability in the global economy.
A default would threaten the gains that we've worked so hard to make over the past few years in our pandemic recovery, and it would spark a global downturn that would set us back much further. It would also risk undermining U.S. global economic leadership and raise questions about our ability to defend our national security interests.
In response to a possible U.S. default, J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said his company has convened a weekly war room. He added that war room sessions will become more frequent, potentially several times a day, as June 1st approaches. Dimon also warned that a potential default would spark panic among investors in the U.S. and will trickle into the global stock markets. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden on Wednesday hinted that he may attend the upcoming G7 summit in Hiroshima, Japan virtually, or not go at all, depending on the course of his negotiations with congressional leaders on the debt ceiling. His comments came a day after talks with congressional leaders failed to produce a breakthrough. While Biden said he's still committed to attending the gathering of the 7 major economies, the debt issue remains the single most important thing on the agenda at the moment for the U.S. leader. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Last year by being able to reduce the price.
The World Health Organization has declared that mpox is no longer a global health emergency. The decision comes 10 months after the viral disease was given emergency status and at a time when COVID-19 is also waning. Our Yoon reports.
The World Health Organization declared mpox, formerly known as monkeypox, a public health emergency of international concern in July of 2022, reconfirming that status in November and again as recently as February. However, on Thursday, the WHO's Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus declared an end to the disease's 10-month-long emergency status based on recommendations from the organization's Emergency Committee. More than 87,000 mpox cases have been confirmed globally, including 140 deaths in the period between January 2022 and April 2023. And in the past 3 months, almost 90% fewer mpox cases were reported compared to the previous 90 days.
Yesterday, the Emergency Committee for Mpox met and recommended to me that the multi-country outbreak of Mpox no longer represents a public health emergency of international concern. I have accepted that advice, and I am pleased to declare that the mpox is no longer a global health emergency.
The recent figures suggest that mpox is under control. Nicola Lowe, vice chair of the WHO's Emergency Committee on Mpox, said that the number of cases is falling, but transmission continues to circulate. But the disease needs strategic management in the long term, rather than relying on emergency measures. The viral disease spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids and causes flu-like symptoms and pus-filled skin lesions, and cases were reported in more than 100 countries. The transition now means response and preparedness to tackle the disease will be moved to disease surveillance programs at a national level, as is the case for diseases like HIV. Yoon, Arirang News.
Terraform co-founder Do Kwon attended his first trial in Montenegro, where he's been detained for having forged documents while being on the run after a massive cryptocurrency crash. He pleaded not guilty and has applied for bail. Disgraced crypto firm CEO Do Kwon appeared at a district court in Montenegro's capital on Thursday. This is his first trial since being arrested in the Balkan country back in March for holding a fake passport while he was under an international arrest warrant for defrauding investors in crypto schemes. Also appearing was an aide of Kwon's who has been detained alongside him. They were allegedly holding Costa Rican and Belgian passports respectively at the time. The two pleaded not guilty, with Kwon claiming his Costa Rican passport was legitimate and that he has done nothing illegal. They also filed for bail, offering to each pay 400,000 euros or some $436,000 US. The lawyer reportedly proposed that supervision measures be imposed instead of detention. While state prosecutors objected to offering bail, the court judge still has to offer her ruling on the proposal. The judge asked Kwon about how much exactly his assets are worth, citing the need to factor this into her decision-making. Kwon refrained from answering, but he reportedly told the court that he and his wife jointly own some property in Seoul worth around $4 million US. The next hearing date is set for June 16th. This comes as both South Korea and the U.S. are seeking the extradition of Kwon in connection with a $40 billion crash of his Terraform Labs cryptocurrency that devastated retail investors around the world. But if convicted in Montenegro over forged documents, Kwon could face up to 5 years in prison before being extradited. In what will be South Korean national football team head coach Jurgen Klinsmann's first major test, the Taega Warriors were drawn in Group E for the upcoming Asian Cup. South Korea is the highest-ranked team in the Group E at 27th in the world and will play against Malaysia, Jordan, and Bahrain. Bahrain is the only country in the group to have defeated South Korea. The Asian Cup will be played in Qatar from January 12th to February 10th. China was originally supposed to host the tournament this summer, but was removed as host country in May 2022 due to COVID-19 pandemic and China's zero-COVID policy. Exciting news for tea lovers out there. South Korea's southern county of Hadong is hosting the World Tea Expo, a chance to explore the finest quality tea and its history. Our Choi Soo-young takes us there.
Hadong-gun County is Gyeongsang-namdo Province is famous for its wild green tea. It's been the hub of Korean tea culture since the Shilla era, some 1,200 years ago. Hadong-gun County includes parts of Jirishan National Park and offers beautiful views of the mountains under the blue sky with clear air and fresh water. The air is full of the scent of tea, and within this rich tea culture, the 2023 World Tea Expo Hadong is finally happening after being delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As well as the expo, visitors can take a tour along a beautiful healing road from Jeonggeum Tea Farm to Sangye Temple, the first tea plantation in South Korea.
I like green tea so much, and I've wanted to come to see the guide dog, Tom. The way to a pavilion at the top may be a little boring, but climbing with Tom is an exciting experience, so that's why I've come here.
On the way, visitors can see the unique attraction of the Toshim Tea Farm, which has a 1,000-year-old tea tree. The other trees here all come from its lineage, creating a large farm that is unique to Korea.
I don't know, we've come here to see the tea fields. We're on a trip, 2-week trip around Korea. We wanted to go into the country a little bit, see something a bit different. We're staying in the mountains a bit higher, do some walks, and there's a tea expo on, so we've come to see that as well.
So this is our first time to Korea, and we've come to Hadong for the first time. Sadly, we missed the blossom, but we're very excited that we're going to get to see the tea expedition. We're amazed at how beautiful it is, and just how pristine and well kept everything is, and how friendly everyone has been, and so welcoming as well.
At the end of the tour, visitors can see people who cultivate tea by hand, just like they did 1,000 years ago. They believe that this old, traditional way is the best way of protecting Korean tea culture. The expo will be held until June 3rd, and the committee said that this World Tea Expo Hadong aims to make people healthier and happier through Korean tea culture. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
The legacy of South Korea's ancient Gaya Confederacy, the Gaya Tumuli, has been recommended for the UNESCO World Heritage. If the tumuli are added to the list, South Korea will have a total of 16 sites on the list. Chung Eun-ju tells us more.
The Gaya Tumuli, 7 tomb clusters from Korea's ancient Gaya Confederacy, has been recommended for inclusion on the UNESCO World Heritage list. According to South Korea's Cultural Heritage Administration on Thursday, the Gaya Tumuli was recommended during a meeting of the International Council on Monuments and Sites, or ICOMOS, a non-governmental international organization that offers advice to UNESCO on World Heritage sites. The final decision will be made during the 45th World Heritage Committee session, which will be held in Saudi Arabia in September. Cultural Heritage Authority said the ICOMOS recognized the nominated property's outstanding universal value as important evidence of Gaya. Gaya was a loosely knit federation of 6 or 7 small kingdoms that prospered between the 1st and 6th centuries in the southern and central regions of the Korean peninsula. The tumuli consists of 7 clusters of tombs that display the architectural style graves built in the 4th and 5th centuries. Burial accessories and grave goods also show Gaya's network of trade and handcrafted manufacturing. The 7 cemeteries are located in visible hill areas in the political center of the respective polities. If the tumuli are added to the list, South Korea will have 16 sites included on the UNESCO World Heritage list. 정은주, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. South Africa has been accused of supplying Russia with arms amid its ongoing war in Ukraine. U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Ruben Brigetti, during a media briefing on Thursday, alleged that South Africa covertly loaded weapons and ammunition onto a Russian freighter in early December. It was docked at a Cape Town naval base at the time. Brigetti called on South Africa to adhere to its non-alignment policy. Pretoria hit back, saying that the allegations were disappointing and without evidence. It did, however, announce an inquiry into the matter. Meanwhile, the UK confirmed on the same day that it's supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles. The missiles are fired from aircraft and have a range of some 250 kilometers. Turning over to the United States-Mexico border, where tens of thousands of migrants raced to enter the U.S. ahead of the lifting of pandemic-era entry requirements. Those rules, known as Title 42, have been replaced by stricter requirements for asylum seekers as of midnight on Thursday. The COVID-19-era policy gave border officials the power to expel migrants. However, with the COVID-19 health emergency coming to an end, more stringent rules have been implemented with more funds and officials dispatched to the border. Almost all migrants who enter the U.S. illegally will be denied asylum. Those who have passed through another country without seeking refuge elsewhere or don't apply online will also be barred. Now, conflicts and natural disasters around the world in 2022 have caused an all-time high of over 71 million internally displaced people. This is according to a report on Thursday by the Norwegian Refugee Council. The new figure is up 20% from 2021. Internal displacement refers to people forced to move within their country's borders. The report did not account for those who left for other nations. The Council said the war in Ukraine and major floods and droughts combined to create the perfect storm. And finally, Elon Musk has said he has found a new CEO for Twitter. The current head of the social media platform made the announcement in a tweet on Thursday. He did not reveal the new CEO's identity, saying only that she will start in the next 6 weeks. Musk previously announced last November that he would begin spending less time at Twitter and eventually find someone to take over the company's reins. Since Musk acquired Twitter through a $44 billion takeover in October, he has introduced paid verification, restored banned accounts, and reduced Twitter's workforce by 80%. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. After a confusing first week of May in terms of weather, this week has been sunnier with summer-like temperatures. We are ending the week under cloudy to sunny skies depending on where you are, but wide gaps between mornings and afternoons are the common pattern for most parts of the country again today. Now, air quality in the capital region in Chungcheong-Namdo province has improved, while the ozone level will be bad in central parts of the country with sunnier skies than in southern provinces. Top readings are 2 to 3 degrees lower this afternoon with rain in the forecast on Jeju Island from tonight. Jeju and the south coast will see 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall into tomorrow afternoon. Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-Pukdo province should also brace for some passing showers. Now, the rest of the country will also see some isolated rain on Sunday. Meanwhile, temperatures will rise further next week as we get into mid-May. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.